Absolutely. Okay, having clicked on continue, so now otherwise I have like a box in front of everybody's face. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us. The college takes its responsibility to be a generator of new knowledge seriously. And so we want to support the different types of scholarship that occur in the college. In fact, you probably know that there's a research and innovation forum at the undergraduate level that originally was a research forum. And we said, no, research forum is not that. And then somebody from business says, oh, about innovation. And we said, fine, but creativity is a part of what we do, right? Not everybody does the kind of analytical scholarship that I do or that Erin does. There's a large part of the college that does other kinds of creative activity, no less important than research in the humanities and the social sciences or the sciences. If you look at dollar amounts, certainly the natural science research is the most expensive and therefore the one that takes the largest amount of dollar, but that doesn't mean that we neglect other part of the research and creativity enterprise. So we have different pots of money. We have, in fact, a publication. I'm going to briefly share the screen if my computer helps me out over here. Here we go. We have a booklet. Can you see it? Yes, no, maybe?
Not yet.
It's
Okay.
loading.
Yes, oh, sorry. Loading. So this also, yes? Okay, so this also allows you to have the web page where you can find this nifty booklet. So as.miami.edu/faculty support. And I would say we have different types of funding available. Some of which right now I'm going to mention, but it's going to sound quaint. So we have money set aside for you to travel to meet program officers. Like if you want to go to Research Triangle Park and talk to the folks at NEH, you're welcome to use some of the dollars of the college, except right now you cannot travel. So, okay. And the same goes for grant writing workshops. We used to have every year and a half, a grant writing workshop that we would have on campus with the idea that one size fits most. It turns out that no, one size doesn't really fit anybody. And it's a better use of our time and our money to send you to a grant writing workshop that's appropriate to your area or field. Money that we can use now, because it doesn't involve travel, include seed funding and bridge funding. So seed funding is you have an idea, you want to start exploring this idea. It might be purchasing a database or a data set. It might be, again, if we could travel, going to a library, to an archive to see if the material is in fact there in order to get jump started on a project. And the bridge funding is, again, more typical in the science, but could be for a digital humanist, for example, if you know that one grant is tapering off and another one will come, but you want to continue to pay the undergrad or graduate student working with you in the weeks, months in between grants, that's what bridge funding does for you. For most of us, I assume on this call, I don't know, it's an assumption, eventually what your research will find a natural outlet in the form of an article or a book. And so we have a category of programs that support publishing as well as grant writing. So we have an external reviewer program. We've set aside money for those writing a grant of $50,000 or more. And again, I hasten to say, it's no longer just the purview of the natural scientist. Digital humanists, for example, can command serious amounts of dollars, right? So if you're applying for a grant of if you're applying for over $50,000 to a federal entity, we set aside some money for you to send this proposal to somebody you trust in the field, somebody who typically has served on a federal grant agency panel, so that this person can give you early feedback. As you know, there's only a very small number of times you can submit a proposal to a federal agency, the same proposal, it's 2. So that gives you an early read so that you can start addressing some of the things that the federal agency, for example, has in mind. We likewise have a proposal editing program. This is after the concept is clear, after your colleague has given you feedback. If that's applicable, then we send your proposal to a service provider, to a third party who does that for a living. There's people who do that for a living. To make sure that the proposal contains all the pieces it needs to contain. This is in addition to what Tracy will tell you about what her office does, to maximize your chances of being funded. As far as books are concerned, we have 2 separate complementary programs. One sets aside some money for you to send your book, the whole book or most of your book and a book proposal, to a person in your field whose judgment you trust, who gives you an early reader report. This is a humbling experience, but for me, at least, it was always better to have somebody I knew and trust do it, because the feedback was a lot more palatable than have somebody you've never seen in your life tell you, yeah, no, the structure is all wrong, or whatever they're gonna say. Again, this is the idea behind this is to minimize the changes that you will have to make because of the external reviewers with the press. And then finally, we have an old-fashioned publication support fund. It allows you to pay for image rights, citation rights, page setting costs, all the things. For those of you who haven't yet placed the book, all the hidden costs of publishing a book, which can run into the thousands of dollars. And so again, the idea of the college is we don't want you not to be able to publish or to go to a lesser price just because you think you can't afford publication costs. So this was admittedly very, very fast. You have the booklet, and if, I don't know, Megan, do I ask for questions now? Should we do it at the end?
Maria, can you talk about the top-off policy?
Oh, the top-off policy, yes. The top-off policy, that's a good one. Okay, so the top-off policy is actually technically called the leaves and supplemental salary for fellowships and scholarships. So for those of us in the humanities and creative arts, the most important, well, I cannot generalize, but for me, the most important asset that I have is time. And I don't write a grant such that I can buy myself out of teaching. But having time away from teaching is very, very helpful. Again, in the spirit of, we need to make sure that people apply for fellowships without having to worry about whether the fellowship or the scholarship pays as much as the base salary. We have put together this program, this supplemental funding program, such that if you raise 1/3 of your 9-month salary, the college will top off the other 2/3. This is actual money that comes to you. It does not include travel funds, housing, this kind of stuff. But that means that if you are an assistant professor making $60,000, you want to go to the Newbery says, I'm gonna give you housing and $20,000, the college is gonna give you the other 40. This is pretty generous, I gotta say, because we went looking on other institutions' websites. But that, again, that makes a difference in wanting to be able to apply and then be able to not have to worry about, can I go to Newbury for a year or not? Thank you, Tracy, for reminding me of that. Oops. So questions now or questions later? Megan, what do you think?
I think since we have the chat function going, if there's anything pressing, please use the chat. But because we have so many people in the meeting, we'll wait for vocal questions till the end.
Perfect.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm assuming folks will, if we think of something later, we can do that towards the end. So thank you, Maria.
But I will jump in just to reiterate that University of Miami, in my experience, has been very generous in topping up and things like that. I've gotten support over the years that colleagues at other places haven't. So we're fortunate and very fortunate in that respect, as I've said in various book acknowledgements. All right, we'll now turn to Joanna Johnson, a senior lecturer, and also the director of the Writing and Composition program, to talk about some of the grant writing support that you can get in terms of polishing the writing and so forth. So please take it away, Joanna.
Thank you, Hugh, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon, and thank you, Megan, too. So yeah, I'm here to tell you about a few resources that we have internally, some of the things that Maria mentioned a few moments ago. In fact, some of that we can provide for you without you having to go out of the house. So I'm going to share my screen right now and just take you through a few resources that we have. So I'm going to talk to you today about a couple of things then. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, thank you. All right, so grant writing then, and the brief agenda, I'm going to tell you some very quick tips and strategies for writing a strong application, and also then the resources that we can offer to you at the University of Miami in order to get more help. So if you want to follow along on your own, there's the slide deck URL right there. Actually, I can put that into the chat as well. Except I don't think I can put the chat in while I'm sharing my screen. I'll do that in just a moment. Okay, so how do we write a strong application? That's my main piece of advice to you to get funding. You need to write that strong application, but how do you do it? Okay. So this is one of my favorite quotes ever. No reviewer has ever said that an application was too easy to read. Nobody ever in the history of grant application writing. And in fact, that comes from an article in Nature, but in fact, I think this is applicable to all disciplines. And I've got, these are my 4 points for writing a good grant application. You need to start early, and that's not just about finding the funding itself, but writing the proposal too. Know your audience. You want to keep it simple, and this is a piece of advice that we often give to people, and I think it's especially relevant perhaps for people in the humanities, because I think a lot of us, we like to wax lyrical, and I think that's great in lots of certain circumstances, but it's not necessarily great when you're writing a grant application. And you need to make sure that you follow the guidelines and follow the rules. And so keeping it simple and keeping it within the guidelines are two very good pieces of advice. And get the help. And here I'm here to sort of tell you a little bit more about what that help might look like from us. So NEH, and I've tailored this particular just short talk to the NEH because obviously it's the Center for Humanities, but in fact these suggestions are these are apt for any federal funding that you're going to find. They're exactly the same. So what are these suggestions for writing a strong application? Again, same criterion that you would apply to any good piece of writing. Get a sense of the audience. Who are you actually writing to? So the key to writing a strong application is understanding how and by whom you're going to be reviewed. So you should write your application understanding who's going to be reading it and what they're actually looking for. It depends on the different kinds of applications, but there's always going to be peer reviewers. There are always going to be people who are in your, not necessarily in your discipline, not necessarily in your field. They might be, but they're certainly not going to have any specialist knowledge of what you're writing about. So you need to keep it relatively general. And you need to remind yourself while you're writing it that these people who are reading it are probably reading a number of other applications too. So yours needs to stand out, it needs to be clear, and you need to make your audience not have to work at getting through the application that you're writing. And again, as I say, follow those guidelines. I know that sounds like a really simple piece of advice, but you would be amazed how many people do not follow the guidelines. If it says 3 pages, it means 3 pages. So the review criteria, and this is all from the NEH. This is nothing that I've invented myself. You can find this yourself through a quick Google on the NEH website. But I want to take you through some of the review criteria. Especially, I'm not going to talk about each one, but certainly I don't want to miss out the first one because this is the most important in your application. The intellectual significance of what you're doing. That's what you have to foreground first and foremost. It's not enough to say, I think this is really interesting and I think it's a great idea. I'm sure it is, but you need to show why and how it's going to be of value to people. And that's, you know, that all comes in the narrative and when you're actually talking about the project within the grant application itself. And then specifically then, just very briefly, what I'm talking about today is much more about the applicant's clarity of expression. So these are the review criteria, and look, they're particularly looking for the applicant's clarity of expression. Remember, keep it simple. The application is a tricky document. It's a particular kind of genre. It's certainly different from a journal article. It's certainly different from a book proposal. We're never taught how to write it in graduate school, although I do notice a few graduate students, which is great here on this webinar. So that's fantastic to see you all here, and we're teaching you how to write it now. So, so remember your audience, communicate your work clearly, make it easy on your readers. They're probably reading it late at night. They're probably very tired. They're probably fed up with whatever else is going on in the world. Maybe it's a pandemic or something. Make it clear what you're doing. Don't hide your topic. Avoid any illusions that make it specialist. And again, I'm going to reiterate, you know, especially us those of us in the humanities, we want to talk a lot about what we do. It's not necessarily relevant to talk a lot about what you're doing. What you're doing is selling the project, and you want to make it clear about why it's relevant and why it's significant. And that's very subtly different, but importantly different. So limit the jargon and explicitly address the criteria that they list. Pay attention to details. So drafting early, I mentioned that already. Start as early as you possibly can. You cannot start too early and solicit feedback, and we have lots of people to help you get that feedback. I'm going to tell you about that in just a moment. And the NEH says to proofread. Oftentimes when people tell you to proofread, what they really mean is to edit and revise and rewrite and rework and spend a lot of times, many times, over and over again, rewriting your proposal with appropriate feedback. But on top of that, of course, you should also proofread, but the proofreading doesn't come until a lot further in the writing process. So where can I get this kind of help with writing my grant application? Well, you can get it right here at the University of Miami. We have a writing center. It's open to everybody. And this is the URL. You can just log on here. And if you haven't got an account already, you can sign up. If you're a faculty or researcher, then you can just email me and I can help you set up those appointments directly. If you're a student, graduate student, you can directly enroll yourselves. We can meet with you for one-on-one for up to a couple of hours each time, 1 to 2 hours each time. And I encourage you to bring your application at any stage. Begin early. Bring us your ideas. Bring us nothing. Bring us yourself with a laptop. We're all meeting all online on it's not exactly Zoom, but it's a Zoom type application. So we can help you with thinking through ideas, drafting, synthesizing, revising, editing, proofreading, as I said. We also have a weekly faculty writing group that provides friendly support and friendly accountability. It's not meant to be any finger wagging or hectoring about what you have or you haven't done that week. It's a support group. I can't tell you exactly when that's meeting because we're still, it met at different times over the summer, but I can certainly let you know if you're interested in doing that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just share the URLs I wanted to let you know about in the chat. So there's the slide deck there, and University of Miami Writing Center link to sign on if you want to create an account or make an appointment, or just email me directly. Thank you.
Thanks. Joanna, can I ask a question just while we're here? You mentioned the faculty writing group. Is there also a graduate student writing group? I thought I remembered that there was one. Maybe
there is a graduate writing group. There isn't one this semester. We've had to temporarily postpone it just because of very, very stretched resources and trying to get some faculty to teach classes. So it's temporarily postponed, but it does exist. It's called the Dissertation Writing Group. We run it in conjunction with the graduate school. And we do have, I mean, you know, we have informal meetings anyway. The Dissertation Writing Group is much more of a formal kind of application process, and we work with the graduate school to have people check in on a weekly basis, and there is a little bit more formal accountability there. But the informal accountability, I mean, the faculty writing group, obviously those of you who are members of faculty are welcome to join that. And informally, I don't see why, you know, we can't set up some kind of reading or writing group amongst ourselves, or amongst graduate students amongst themselves. We have lots of graduate students who work in the Writing Center already, and I'm sure several of them might want to create their own group, or we can help them create one too.
Great, thank you. And so for the graduate students who are here today, if that's something that is of interest to you, feel free to email me. I can kind of just do a straw poll and see if there's enough interest, and I can chat with you, Joanna, about actually maybe seeing what the next steps are. I thought I remembered the dissertation group or something of that, that nature. For those who want to join the faculty writing group, is there a process to do that, or do they have to sign up, register?
Yes, it's very complex. You need to email me.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Joanna? Okay, so now we'll move on to representatives from the Vice Provost for Research Office. We're fortunate to have Erin Kovitz, who is in fact the Vice Provost for Research here, despite the fact that she has about a million things going on right now. And also Ali Masser and Sheila Dominguez. And so I'll let you all proceed.
Awesome. So thank you, Hugh and Megan, for providing us the opportunity to join this forum. I am just going to say hi quickly and then actually need to jump off to run to a meeting with Provost Dirk. So I hope you understand, but feel very confident that Ali and Sheila can convey some important information, and how we hope under my leadership that the Office of the Vice Provost for Research and Scholarship can support the work that all of you are doing, because it's critically important to our institutional mission to advance knowledge. My own sort of disclosure, I think you know this, is that my undergraduate training was actually in the humanities. It's very, very close to my heart, and I draw on a lot of the epistemologies from humanities-based disciplines to inform even my own biomedical research in the space of public health sciences. So look forward to working with all of you and learning from all of you. Maria has big plans for me in the space of undergraduate research and scholarship, and thinking about how we can be more inclusive for students who don't necessarily want to do what would be now our traditional research training, but to have opportunities to work with scholars on their own work across the university. So with that, I'm gonna beg off, but I think Ali and Sheila will give you some important information about some of the stuff we're doing and some of the stuff we plan to do. So thank you guys so much, and I am always available by email if you have questions.
And by the way, I don't have plans for you. I would like to work with you, but I don't have.
I'm just giving you a little bit of, if I can't give you a little bit of, I'm not sure I can say this on Zoom, poop.
Yeah. We're good.
On the end of a very long week, I don't know who I can do that with. It's said out of much love and admiration for you.
You're good.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Erin.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allie Mosser. So I work in the Office of Research and Scholarship, sort of in the area of research development and strategy. So I sort of help to manage our internal funding opportunities, but also thinking strategically about how to support you all in finding grants and sort of being the best scholars you all can be. And I'm joined by Sheila Dominguez. Sheila, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I actually don't know most of you because I have been primarily based out of the medical school. My role is as Executive Director of Strategic Operations for the University of Miami Clinical and Translational Science Institute. And while that is a university-wide institute, as you can imagine, we have tended to focus on the medical campus. That is changing because now I have a dual role as a liaison between CTSI and OVPR. So I'm here to talk through what the future holds and what we're looking into, and also to hear from folks about what the needs are and what gaps may be so that we can better tailor services in the future.
That's a great point, Sheila, and I agree too. I think we're here, and I have my email at the end, but we're here to hear feedback from you all as well. So as you heard from Erin, she's really going to sort of set sort of like her vision toward creating an inclusive sort of office of research and scholarship as much as possible. And so you'll see in some of the resources that I'll mention and sort of thinking toward the future, these ideas around how to make, you know, administrative effort friendlier toward you all in the humanities, right? So you might have to fill out, you know, conflict of interest stuff through our office, but oftentimes the questions are tailored completely away from what you all are focusing on. Or, you know, you're applying to these maybe smaller grants, right? You're applying for a pot of $5,000, but you have to go through the same steps that faculty who are applying to a $500,000 NIH application is. So this is all stuff that we're gonna start taking like a sort of shining a spotlight on. So the more feedback we get from you all, the better. And I think Sheila can speak to this too, but over time, I think this will be a little more formalized. So in terms of a research strategic plan that Erin is currently working on and will be, you know, coming to you all for feedback on. So all of that, I'll just get into some of the resources we have. So we have some internal funding opportunities. We feel really lucky that we can offer a bunch of these still this year. So we have the ULink funding initiative. So this is part of the President's Roadmap. And this is, so it's the University of Miami Laboratory for Integrative Knowledge. And so what we do within ULink is seed fund projects, but also courses around these grand challenges to society and sort of understanding these issues from a multidisciplinary lens. So we fund these large teams, but I think we'll also move towards starting to fund scholars who their actual research interests tend to be interdisciplinary. We think that's really important. So this summer we put out a rapid call for work around social equity. So we got 26 applications, and I see some of you on this call are represented there. Amazing applications, great representation. We have people from every school, but the School of Music had applied. So we'll be releasing those in the next couple of weeks. But what we're doing this year is we're having sort of a global focus of the year. And so this year's global focus will be social equity. And so what we're planning on doing is having sort of like year-long programming around social equity. And so we'll be looking to bring in scholars to sort of speak on their expertise around social equity, but from their unique disciplinary lens, and sort of trying to find these cross sections across the university of people working on this kind of work and how we can collaborate. And then most of you probably know about the Provost Research Awards and the Fellowship in the Arts and Humanities, and we'll be hosting both of these this year as well. So there have been some issues in the past around sort of like an overlap in timeline between these two awards. So you couldn't necessarily apply to the Provost Research Awards and find out in time if you've gotten that award before applying to the Fellowship in the Arts and Humanities. So that'll be different this year. So the plan is that we're going to run the Provost Research Awards in the fall. So you can apply to the Provost Research Awards, get word whether you move to the central office stage of the funding, whether you get the funding, and then if you don't get that funding, you can apply to the fellowship in the arts and humanities. If you're just interested in applying to the fellowship, totally fine, but we wanted to give you an opportunity to apply for both, and only get one, but apply for both. We also handle in our office limited submission competitions. So when you see a grant funding announcement come across your desk where it stipulates that only one applicant from the university can move forward, that's something our office handles. And so what happens is either you reach out to us or the competition will come across our desk, and we create an internal competition. And so basically you compete internally, and then through a review process, you're selected to move forward. So this is kind of like a PSA. If you see these announcements coming out, this is from Eva Oliveris. I'm sure you see a ton of her emails come through. That's what that is. But also, if you're interested in a funding opportunity and you know that no more than one person can apply, reach out to us, and then we get everything, you know, set for you to compete. One of our close partners is also Foundation Relations. We work really closely with Melissa Peerless and Joanna De Velasco over there. If you're interested in knowing more about the kinds of funding that they can help facilitate applications to, they will, many of you probably know this, but they will sit on the phone with you and talk to a program officer. They're fantastic. Reach out to them or reach out to us, and we can get you in contact with them. They're a great resource to have. So in terms of grant support, and this is, the CTSI has a fantastic cache of resources too. So I'll have Sheila pop in here a bunch as well. But a couple of things we have. So to find grant funding, we have this resource called Pivot. And so you might see on our website, we have Spin Plus. There are some tools basically to help you find grant funding, and Pivot is one of those tools we have a subscription to. You can log in using your Cane ID. We all have access to it. And something I really like about Pivot is that you can set up weekly digests. So you can basically put in what are your research interests, and the algorithm will shoot you back weekly grants that are sort of in line with your interests. The algorithm isn't perfect, but you know, you might get one hit out of, you know, a few a year, and that's more than you would have known otherwise. Another nice thing about Pivot is they have a section on basically listing out faculty profiles from the university. So they basically pool that. We don't really have to submit anything to them. So sometimes their sort of descriptions and lists of the faculty we have at the university are sort of more robust than the systems we have currently. So I know we're working toward engaging in sort of like a new system that will hopefully be really helpful to find collaborators. But in the meantime, you can basically search this system for people who do research in a particular area. So I use Pivot when I'm looking for specific reviewers for a competition. I can, you know, type in racial justice and 10 faculty members will come up. So if you're looking for collaborators, which I know sometimes people are, that's a good resource to use. So,
Allie, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because I know that we have several graduate students that have joined today. What of what you've mentioned so far that's available through the OVPR is geared towards graduate students, or could they be eligible for? I know some ULink teams do include graduate students, is that right?
That's a great question. Yes. So through ULink, we have a Pre-Doctoral Fellowship. So the Pre-Doctoral Fellowship basically funds doctoral students who haven't yet proposed their dissertation but will be soon. Funding, I think they're in the beginning stages of their dissertation process, but basically funding students to work on their dissertation with 2 mentors from different areas, so from diverse areas. The preference is that they're studying a grand challenge to society, but certainly I think humanities students would certainly be eligible for this type of thing. As long as you have mentors from 2 distinct areas, that's something you'd be eligible for. Something else to look out for is the graduate school really generously funds the support of one graduate student on each of our larger ULING teams. And so we'll send out an announcement to get graduate students involved on the ULING teams. And so keep an eye out for that as well. That could be a really cool experience as well. Good question. So in terms of Hanover, so CTSI is also working with Hanover, and I think there are a couple of other organizations around the university working with Hanover. I can tell you a little bit about what we fund for Hanover. So this is what you all would be eligible for. So we've contracted with Hanover to provide review services for grants, grant prospecting. So you know, you have a specific idea or a specific area of research, and you want them basically to do all the legwork of these are the different requests for applications that we think you would be really competitive for. Hanover will do that. So we are engaged in a queue model, which means that sort of like one team of faculty works with Hanover at a time. So what we specifically are looking to fund are grants on the larger side and preferably collaborative grants. And they certainly have people who work in areas around the humanities who are experts in reviewing those types of grants. So if you are interested at all in this type of external service, you can email me and we can sort of decide together if that's the right thing or if there's room in the queue or if that's something you want to pursue. Sheila, do you have anything to add about Hanover?
Sure. So we have a complementary program through the Miller School of Medicine that is open to all faculty. The caveat, because it's a subset, is that it must be translational or biomedical research. So I understand that that won't be widely relevant. But for those for whom it might be relevant, we are supporting through the Miller School single PI grant applications to complement the team applications that OVPR is funding. And it's a very similar service that's being offered. They'll review draft grant proposals to make sure that they align with the funding opportunity and are responsive to the funding opportunity. They'll make very specific recommendations, you know, kind of provide some of that combination of proofreading and ensuring that the content is appropriate for the funding opportunity. So these are two ways that you can interact with Hanover. For ease of communication, if anyone is interested in Hanover, I would suggest that they reach out to Allie and you can triage them if there's one that's relevant for our program.
Awesome, thanks Sheila. So something else that CPSI partners with us on are the grant writing workshops you might have heard advertised throughout the past couple of years. This year, the Office of Research and Scholarship won't be able to host these because that was part of our budget cuts. But Sheila can talk a little bit about the creative ways we're trying to allow for sort of the support that Mary Lou King would have provided for you all through these workshops, but virtually and cost effectively.
So essentially, we're not going to be offering the live 5-week courses this year that Mary Lou King had previously offered. Mary Lou King is Professor Emeritus, very successful with grant funding, faculty in cell biology, so a basic scientist from the Miller School of Medicine. And she's had great success in working with a wide variety of types of disciplines. And so what we're doing, since this year we can't have those live sessions, is we are posting recorded sessions that she's done. Those will be widely available. And we also continue to offer one-on-one consultations with Mary Lou King. That's something that the CTSI has always provided for. So essentially, what we would ask is that people first review the videos that are going to be posted, and we can circulate them to everyone in this group following the, this webinar. But essentially, people could review that to make sure that it's not, their question isn't answered from the videos. And what you can do after that is go to miamictsi.org and schedule, there's a section on that homepage for grant writing resources. You can go right online and request a consultation. That will nowadays be via Zoom, but people have reported, and we've seen a great return on investment for those one-on-one consultations. She's an expert at providing detailed scientific feedback for specific aims, responsiveness to summary statements, how to draft the approach sections in a logical manner. She'll do a full grant review or focus on any one of these sections as needed. So we've had great success with that.
Perfect. And I know Joanna Johnson spoke.
Can I quickly jump in there?
Sure.
Oh,
yeah,
please,
please. Shout you out.
I wanted to just add to, you know, we work with, just in case some of you on the, are kind of confused about what we do and what Mary Lou King does. And so we work really closely with Mary Lou King, and quite often Mary Lou will send her the people that she's working with to us at the CTSI Writing Center, and vice versa. So, you know, we work in very close, in a close way with Mary Lou King. So, you know, what she does, obviously she has the scientific knowledge and she can really help you with some of the content. But in terms of the writing, she will often actually redirect the people that are in her group to us. So I just wanted to let you know, because sometimes people get confused about who we are and who she is, and so all of those books are available.
Great point.
No, that's hugely helpful, because you're right. Our aim has always been not to be duplicative, but to be very complementary. So yes, I know that you both work very, very closely together, and you know, ideally you'll see the same kind of customers, right? Because then one can help with some of the content, and your team are experts in a way that Dr. King is not, in doing that really close editing that you all provide and are experts in. So thank you for adding that.
Thanks, Joanna. So something else that might be relevant to some of you, depending on your area of scholarship, we also support, through the School of Education, the program StatsU. So this is run by Soyeon An, and she is the chair of the stats program over there. They're awesome. They're on the Gables campus. You can schedule consultations with them online if you have, you know, methods questions. They also host sort of educational initiatives. So that's just another thing you can check out. So just touching on, and I think Sheila and I got ahead of ourselves a little bit at the beginning, because it's something that I think excites both of us. But sort of plans for the future in this new Office of Research and Scholarship under Erin. One of the aims is sort of, as I mentioned before, to make administrative work friendlier to you all, friendlier to the humanities scholars, friendlier to the creative scholars. That's something we're going to be working on. Within the Research Council, Erin's planning on having subcommittees, and one of those subcommittees will be addressing these types of issues. And I'm sure we'll be bringing in a lot of you, and especially collaborating with the center on figuring out what will work for you all, because that's the most important thing. We're also working on expanding the definition of research in our calls. So we don't necessarily want all of our ULINK calls or all of our Provost Research Awards to necessarily just be calls for, you know, experimental designs. So especially for ULINK this year, what we've done is expanded it to other types of, you know, thought and scholarship, including coursework. So if you had an idea to, you know, tackle social equity within a course, that was something you would have been eligible for this particular ULINK call. But just in general, expanding the definition of research is one of her aims. This was sort of supposed to be launched this year, but the goal eventually is to have in-house grant support services. So right now we have a contract with Hanover. You kind of get a sense from this that we have, like, you know, some of these resources, we kind of like, you know, do that, but we want to have a robust, what our peer institutions have, right? What our aspirational peer institutions have, a central office where you guys can come to us and get these types of resources that you need. So that's something that we're planning on doing once we can, you know, get past this hurdle. But contact us if you have any kinds of questions. This is my email. If you have a question for Sheila, I'm sure she's happy to share her email as well. But that's sort of what we have for you today.
Allie?
Yeah.
Tracy, hi. I think a lot of this information is share it on the listservs? How would they be receiving this information?
Yeah, great question. So we have our research listservs. We also have, I think, an arts and humanities listserv that hopefully you all are on. If you don't think you're on that listserv, shoot us an email. So this would be the listserv that you would see a lot of sort of grant notifications sent through from Eva Oliveris, who works from my group. So yeah, the plan is, and so we're working on this, and hopefully by the end of the month we can have this together, is to separate listservs out by content area. So it won't affect you all too much because you have a pretty solid, arts and humanities listserv going on, and that's where we send out all of our stuff. But then we'll also have, basic sciences and natural sciences, social and behavioral, and clinical. And so you can certainly subscribe to all four, or social and behavioral and arts and humanities. But this is sort of a way we know that you all are overburdened by emails, and the more emails you get on the listserv, the less you look at them, and we're aware of that. And we don't want to, make anybody's lives harder. So, but that's a great question, Tracy. And if you're not sure that you're on one of our listservs, then shoot me an email and we'll get you on one.
Any other questions?
Hi, yes, Marisa Hightower. How are you? So I just wanted to quickly find out what sort of services or support are available for staff researchers. Like, for instance, in our office, we are headed by a faculty member, but then we have full-time staff members who are responsible for finding grants, writing grants, doing the legwork. So where can we tap into for that kind of support?
That's a great question. I know for our Hanover stuff, we would certainly accept if a staff member is spearheading a proposal and they get in contact with us, 100% we would support that. We have prioritized faculty for the grant writing workshops, but certainly when there has been space, staff, and we know the staff are writing a lot of this stuff, are welcome to attend. And I think that maybe, that we're posting all of this stuff now online. We can certainly share that with you all as well, and we'll make sure to have a big announcement about that. Obviously, staff are more than welcome to watch those kinds of videos. Joanna, if a staff member came to you with a proposal?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can certainly help with that. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the paradoxical advantages of being all remote, right? Because it's not like you're in a room that holds 25 or a person who charges per number of attendees. It's on Zoom, so yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I imagine there'd be people in the library and so forth that might also benefit from this.
Yes.
So I want to say how much I welcome the new initiatives Erin's put in place. And I mean, I didn't know about Pivot or Hanover either. So one of the things that I'll be doing over the next week or so is looking into them, and probably we'll post something about it on our website, because the more resources available, the better.
Fantastic.
And I would encourage people, if you have feedback for the research office, you might not want to bring it up now, but send emails and so forth, because I think this initiative to sort of open it up for humanities is really important, really positive. So any other questions? All right, well, again, thanks so much. And our last speaker today is going to be Tracy Ehrlich, who's the Senior Manager for sponsored programs in the College of Arts and Sciences.
Hello, everybody. So as Hugh said, I'm Tracy Ehrlich, Senior Sponsored Programs Manager for Arts and Sciences Research Support. My office has 4 full-time staff. We have Danielle Acosta, who works with the faculty on proposals, pre-award processing, Sarah Thompson, is our post-award expert, and she helps to make sure that the funds are spent according to the guidelines and requirements and policies and procedures of the university and the agencies. And then we have Norma Kahina, who is unfortunately currently on furlough, but she supports the team and keeps us organized, and I fully expect she'll be back in December to help us. It's important to understand the dean set up our office to support the departments in the college, all except for psychology. They have their own team of support. But we support outside funding. We don't actually support a lot of the things that Ali talked about, internal funding. Of course, if you're in a jam and you need a budget, we are more than willing to help step in and help you with that. So please don't, ever hesitate to reach out and ask us questions, but you might get a referral. Our office reports to Dean Voss, who is the Senior Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Education. And I'm just going to talk to you about the things that we do. I'm going to share my screen. I have a document that Ali, let me see which one it is. I'm going to have, not this one. I'm going to show you this one first. This is just a document that summarizes who we are, how to reach us, website information, what we do. And it's just a summary of what we do for proposal assistance, what we do for award processing, and how we might help you during sponsored awards. Just want to talk about the different types of scholarly proposals and funding that we see. Most often, we see fellowship applications, which is why I asked Maria to talk about the top-off policy. Part of the top-off policy requires that your proposal be submitted via our office. You may not need our help, but we're there to help you. And while the Office of Research Administration is trying to figure out how to support these types of fellowships that are awarded to the individuals and not awarded to UM, we have developed an internal process, a very rudimentary form. Please, I created this form years ago when I was in school doing my BFA in InDesign. I don't have InDesign anymore, so it's a little clunky and I apologize, but it's just something to capture the basic information, to share with your chairperson so that your chairperson is aware that you're filing for a possible fellowship. You may not be here next year, those kinds of things, and to also try and get a handle on our success, and where we might need to improve in those kinds of issues. So that's the main information about fellowship processing. And then other kinds of scholarly activities may require a review by our Office of Research Administration. Those are going to be things more that you're going to find are going to have conference funding, for instance. You may have a big event, or you may be planning a conference and you're going to have to apply to different organizations that may give you funding and require deliverables. Also, you may have a small research project, and basically these are proposals that support research or scholarly work. They have salary payments, they may have other kind of research costs. It's going to be more than just a fellowship stipend. And those types of things, the institution requires that we use the IBIS research system, which is a very user-friendly system. I empower the faculty should be empowered to go in there, and graduate students start your own proposals. Let the team know in my office, me or Danielle, and we'll be there to assist you in all the steps of building your proposal except for writing. For writing, we're going to send you to Joanna or to Sheila and the Hanover group, but we're going to help you with your budget, most importantly, and making sure that you're following all the rules and regulations and policies and procedures there with your budget, that you have, that you're looking at things you may not understand the rules about, fringe benefits, capital equipment, what are all these things, F&A, do we pay administrative costs? That's what we're here to help you get to sift through those types of things. And if you don't want to do anything in IBIS, you don't have to do anything in IBIS. Danielle and I will handle that whole process for you. And we'll guide you in what type of attachments you need for your, and trying to interpret the guidelines because they can sometimes be very complicated. If you are submitting a proposal that requires ORA review, they have a 3-day deadline. So they're requiring that the full proposal, except for the proposal narrative, be submitted with the budget 3 days in advance of the agency deadline. And we put together a, I'm trying to share my screen here. We put together a bit of a flow chart. Let's see if I can get it. Yeah, here. If I make it a little bigger for you. To try and give you a sense of timing that we need, because we are, you know, a small office. We're managing a lot of proposals at once. And so we've just been kind of working through this since the new policy, 3-day policy, was implemented in June. And so we're asking for people to please let us know 6 weeks to 2 months before you actually are the deadline. To let us know. Just get on our calendar, be on our horizon that we're aware that you're planning to submit. By 20 days, 20 working days before the deadline, we should be talking about and planning a budget, which I hope the budget could be done 10 days before. And then I would like to see 5 days where we have time to gather the internal approval. So we need to gather the chairperson's approval. There may be exceptions in your proposal where there is no F&A, and so we need a waiver approval, or there might be cost share required, and so then that's another special approval that we have to send through. And it's all done in the IBIS system. So it's very, they're very user-friendly and simple, streamlined processes, but with people's schedules, I want to give us enough time to make sure that we're going to meet that ORA deadline. And then 3 days before the deadline, we're submitting the full application to ORA for their review without the proposal narrative. And then that proposal narrative is due on the day of the submission deadline. If you are new to the process, you might want to put in a draft of your proposal narrative, just to be sure that, I like to take a look at these things to make sure that you have essential and required sections. For instance, NSF requires prior results. NSF also requires broader impacts. And you'll see this with different agencies where they have a section that if you don't have that section, your proposal could be actually returned without review. And so we want to avoid that, of course. Now, this timeline may be a little broader than what you might need for a fellowship application. And we're very flexible with that fellowship process. So if you come to us last minute, Danielle and I are going to do everything we can in our power to help you get it out. And for some fellowships that are awarded to the individuals, we've actually gone ahead and processed them for you after the fact, because sometimes you just can't get it through. And since it's an internal process, we're not being great sticklers on the procedure.
Okay, can I say something, Tracy?
Of course.
Please refer back to what Joanna was saying. Review, revise, double check, right? So all this lead time is good structure for anybody, particularly those who haven't done this before, to build in time to get feedback, to proofread, to think about the structure, to think about your audience and all those things.
Yes, exactly.
And to add to that too, I mean, I know I've said this a little bit, but to reiterate, you know, it's not just, obviously it's not just the proofreading, or, you know, what we will do is we will act as your readers. And if we don't know what you're trying to ask for, then we can help you work with that. We can work with those specific aims pages. We've worked with all disciplines. It's not just about that kind of that sentence level work, although it can certainly include that. It's about, am I making my point clear in the way that the application asks for? And we can work with you very closely in that kind of way. So working with your writing and the delivery and the effectiveness of the communication is super important.
Thank you, Joanna and Maria. And then to get into the awarding process, you may apply for a fellowship initially that tells you that they will not award to your institution, but when it comes to the award stage, a lot of them are in fact willing to award to your institution. So that's something that you might consider. It has benefits, particularly if you're going to get a top off, then your health benefits and all your payroll deductions are managed by the institution. It's also beneficial, I think, as far as taxes are concerned. So it's something you might consider if you are awarded a fellowship. That is usually not made to the institution. And another thing I need to tell you about with the awards is, as somebody mentioned earlier, the conflict of interest policy. The policy, which I have a little information sheet, which I can share now. This policy is really directed toward all faculty and staff or students included who may be involved in funded, sponsored research or sponsored scholarly work. And as I don't remember who exactly mentioned, I think it might have been Aaron, but the questions are not necessarily all geared towards humanities. It's more medical focused, but rightly so, because that's where most of the conflicts, I believe, occur. Nonetheless, it does apply to pretty much anything we do in life. And so training is maybe a 20-minute online, read some information and answer some questions, maybe take you a half an hour. And it's required before you submit any proposals that have to be approved by the institution, and will certainly be required before you are able to accept an award through the institution of Miami. So the University of Miami. And then there's an office set up to help you with that process. And they have extensive websites. So Megan, you'll send that out to everybody, if you don't mind. And I think that's really all I have to say. But once you get your grant, the expenditure processing will happen from the department. And my office will review expenditures for approval, and we're available to assist in rebudgeting, organizing any kind of award modifications that might need to be arranged with the funding agencies.
And just say, for anybody made nervous by the big flow charts and everything, most humanities grants are going to be for individual fellowships,
Yes.
and I've done it a number of times, and that's pretty simple. It's when you have larger grants. We're trying for one over the summer, which would be for the Humanities Center, which would be larger money. And that had budgets, and we had collaborators and so forth. That gets complicated. You need a lot of time for that. For the individual grants, it is pretty straightforward. You need to budget in a little time for Tracy's office, but I'd also reiterate, just, budget in lots of time for going over it and so forth. But it's relatively, most individual things are relatively straightforward in terms of the hoops you have to jump through and so forth. It's the sort of big digital humanities kinds of things. If you're involved in that, that's going to be more complicated. Most of you aren't going to have to worry about it. And if you do have to do it, you'll be part of a team. So you can, hopefully divide up the work and then get help from Tracy's office. So don't be too daunted by, by, the kinds of things that scientists have to go through all the time. and we're sort of spared from that. There are some advantages to being the poor cousins, and one less bureaucracy.
I agree. And in fact, for one faculty member who had a list of fellowships, I didn't personally, I didn't want to have to fill out the form for her 10 different fellowships. So we came up with a way to do the form, and I did a spreadsheet with all the different fellowships. So we're willing to work with you guys on that too, and make the fellowship submission process as simple as possible. I don't want to complicate things.
So any questions? All right, well, I think, Meg, one of the things we'll try to do is next week consolidate some of this information, if that's okay.
Yes, well, what I'm thinking is, first of all, we have recorded the session, so we'll make this available. If you need to go back and review any sessions, we'll put it up on our webpage. For our panelists, if there are any materials that you are okay with me distributing to the group, please send them to me. If you could get them to me early next week, that'd be super. And that way I can email them to all the registrants, whatever's approved to share widely. You can just shoot me an email and we can send that out. And like I said, I'll probably have the recording up on the webpage on Monday for those of you who want to go back and review a particular section. But yes, we'll send out a follow-up email as soon as I get materials from any of the panelists who wish to share those. If I could ask a question, I know we don't have any questions in the chat right now, but something that Joanna, you said earlier, just about the writing process and kind of some of your tips for writing a grant. You mentioned something about don't hide your topic or your thesis. And I'm just, can you give me an example? Can you give us an example maybe of what that might look like? Are you saying that people have a tendency to kind of build up to it like as if it's a novel or some kind of mystery?
That can certainly happen, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it really just goes back to what I was saying. Generally, you can't make it clear enough or simple enough. There just is not a grant application that is too clear and too simple. And that genre is just, again, especially a lot of us who work in the humanities, you know, we like to be descriptive, or we do a lot of close work with texts, and that's what we do, and that's how we research. But with a grant application, what you're actually doing is something that's a little bit different. You're putting it in a framework and you're saying, this is what I'm doing, and this is why it's important, but this is actually what the value of it is going to be. This is what the significance of it is going to be. So it's not, here is what I'm doing is, oh, isn't it very interesting, and look at everything that I'm finding out. It's more about showing how this can be of value to society, to other researchers in the field, to what the discipline can benefit from it. And so that's what I mean about being clear about what you're actually trying to do. So in a sense, you're kind of marketing what you're doing. I mean, I don't necessarily like that term too much, but you are presenting what you're doing to somebody else, and so you're creating a clearer framework. I know actually I have a colleague here, Adina Sanchez Garcia. I know she works with me sometimes on these applications as well. I don't know if she wants to chip in and add anything to what I'm saying here.
Actually, you said a lot of what I was thinking, but it's exactly that. It's a lot of kind of reflective work, and this is really interesting, and not really aligning what you're doing to what the call for proposals, for the call, you know, is asking you for, and that is problematic. If you don't align what you're doing to what they're asking for, it doesn't matter how great your idea is, that's not going to happen. And yeah, and I want to also just to emphasize, it's not just editing. I heard that several times, and I've worked on several grant proposals at the Med Campus. And we read what the peer reviewers have said on articles, for example, and have helped faculty develop content, not develop the content, obviously that's the research, but again, you know, respond to the peer review comments and be able to really present their content in the best way possible. And sometimes it speaks to, sometimes it's a little bit of editing, but sometimes it's a lack of awareness of who their audience is. And so it runs the gamut. But yeah, pretty much, I think it's just that alignment that tends to be missing to what the call is asking for.
Yeah, making explicit what is often implicit. And don't be afraid. It's what we tell our students when they write their papers. Don't be afraid to say what you're doing. I know that there's that old adage, show don't tell. But sometimes in grant applications, in fact, you do have to tell. This is what I'm doing, and this is why it's important. And those kinds of very clear statements can be markers. They can be helpful as you go along. But all of you who are listening today, these are the things that we can work with you on to a great extent.
And let me jump in as somebody sort of on the other end who's written lots of grant applications and had a fair amount of success, has written lots of ghastly first drafts, quite frankly, because part of what you're trying to do is you're trying to pack a book into 2 or 3 pages, sometimes 1,200 words. And you're trying to show how fascinating it is and how you really have a command of the field, and you're trying to do lots of different things in that book, and you're trying to pack it all in, and it's easy to lose sight of the forest for the trees and sort of get wandering around. And so, I mean, it's also good to have colleagues read it who are in your field outside, but it's also good to have outsiders and specialists in writing read it. So because it's this weird genre, and it is hard to do. It has just a lot of challenges.
And I've just posted a really nice little article that we often get our students to read, and it's such a good one. Shitty first draft, forgive the language, but it's what it's called. In order to get a good second, third, and brilliant fourth or fifth or sixth draft, you've got to start with that first one. So get it on paper, and then we can help you. And as I said, you don't even have to get it on paper. Just bring yourselves. What are your ideas? How do you want to? Oh, here Adina has put it up for us. Thank you so much. Yeah, you see, it wasn't just me trying to shoehorn in some language. So yeah, get it on paper, and we can help you with it.
And along the same lines, but extending it a little bit, what Sheila and Ali said, for example, when it comes to foundations are interested in supporting something that they themselves, their founders, were passionate about. And so really they're doing your research. So you're matching a facet of what you're doing, a chapter of your book, right? To continue with what Hugh was saying is really important. I'll give you the example of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We were after them in the college for years, and we tried different applications, and we're like, well, we're not successful. And then a colleague comes in who's interested in health disparity and the environment, which is exactly what they're interested in. And first try, she got funded. Right? And I'm sure it was a fantastic, well-written, well-researched, lots of feedback obtained on grant application, but really was a question of match. And so having these resources like Pivot is important, because then you can go in and you can find things that you didn't even think about until presented in a certain way. And that in turn allows you to think about your own project in a slightly different way, right? It might grow another extra couple of chapters.
And Maria, a good resource for the foundations is the foundation relations team that Ali mentioned. In my office, we also work very closely with them. And they may not know a foundation, and they can find out what their deal is and what their interests are.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And Joanna De Velasco, I think majored in anthropology. So she gets the social sciences and the humanities. I know her better than Melissa, but from everything I hear, they're both great.
And I have a third person that has joined them, Shane. I can't remember his last name now, but the three of them they'll also help you write.
Okay.
Right. Well, it's getting late
I know
on a
we're
Friday afternoon.
Right.
So unless anybody has any questions, I think we may wind down. But I'd like to give a big thank you to the speakers and thank everybody for attending. on a on a Friday afternoon after the first couple of weeks of a crazy semester. So enjoy your weekend, and if you do have any questions, you can write the speakers, or you can channel them through the questions through us, and we'll make sure that it gets to the proper person. So,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Just, oops. Huh. Okay. So, all right, I guess everybody has to get off before I can end for some reason. Here we go.